In situations where you are confronted with a lot of identified requirements, naturally, you would want to determine which are more important than the others. Not all customers need the same features, plus they have different priorities and feelings attached to these needs. Kano analysis is used to understand which product characteristics or qualities will prove to be a significant differentiator in the marketplace and help to drive customer satisfaction. Today, we'll plot a Kano analysis graph together, and we'll use a Kano analysis questions grid to demonstrate how to determine which features are the most important to implement before releasing a solution to the market. Let's start by outlining the graph. In the beginning, we need two axes. The x-axis represents a degree of achievement, meaning if a need has been met or not. We can try to ask questions like, was it done poorly? Or was it done very well? The y-axis depicts customer satisfaction, that is, displays the answers to questions like, did customers find the solution not so appealing? Or were they delighted? When looking at a Kano analysis graph, there are 4 possible categories for product characteristics. In one category, we can talk about requirements that, if met, the customers are neutral about, but if they are not met, the customers are disappointed. These are known as threshold characteristics. So, having these requirements implemented, we will not get overly satisfied and impressed customers, but by omitting them, we'll get unhappy and annoyed customers. There is a big challenge in identifying these features, as you need to ask customers about them explicitly. Since the customers assume they will get these by default, they usually do not think about them. Let's check on an example. Have you ever played an escape room game? For those who don't know what this is, it's real-life teams play. So a team is assembled in a themed room and usually has 1 hour to find hidden clues, solve challenging puzzles, and unlock the padlocks throughout the room and successfully escape it. For all players, the experienced ones or those who play for the first time, the common expectation is that all the assets work well and that they don't abstract you during the game. So if you need a joystick to move an electronic arm to catch the next key, you would expect that the batteries are charged. If a game master has to come into the room and exchange the batteries, no matter how charming they are, the players will be frustrated, and in most cases, this will ruin the game. So, as for threshold characteristics, the conclusion is that you don't have a choice, you just need to include them. The next category is the needs that can be verbalized by the customers. Usually, customers can tell you about them. What is also specific for this category is that the more features you have, the better. We are talking about performance characteristics. If we go back to our example of playing an escape room game, if there are only a few padlocks and easily breakable puzzles, even if all the locks work correctly, this will not make you better than your competition. To increase performance characteristics, the creators of the game should aim to design more challenging clues, preferably to include all senses and to require teamwork. But the moments when you, for example, collect 3 statues and put them on the marked spots when unexpectedly you hear a sound of secret doors opening and a whole new hidden room is in front of you, are what makes most players delighted. What also thrills the players is if a game master surprisingly appears as a part of the game. These are examples of excitement characteristics. Excitement characteristics are those that were not expected by the customers but make them impressed and significantly increase their satisfaction. The 4th category is indifferent characteristics. These are usually not represented on the graph and they don't add any value to the customer. Plus, the customer doesn't want them. Now, take a moment to reflect on all 4 characteristics. Which one of them do you think would give you a competitive advantage? Which one, in your opinion, represents a good return of investment? You're right, excitement characteristics are those that appeal to customers the most and give them high satisfaction with just a few features implemented. So always aim to choose one or two of these to incorporate in your product or service. There is one more ingredient that can help you with prioritizing customer satisfaction. That is to determine a category based on two forms of questions about a feature. The functional form of a question is one that is focusing on the customer's feelings if a feature is present. This is also known as a positive question. On the other hand, the dysfunctional form, or a negative question, is paying attention to the responses when some characteristics are absent from the product. To conclude, you need to ask your customers two questions about each requirement. The first question is to determine how the customer feels if you can meet the demand. And the second question is to determine what the customer thinks if you cannot meet the requirement. Note that the negative question in the Kano questionnaire serves as a consistency check. The combination of two questions for each requirement helps to determine the type of need. Both question forms need to have the same set of possible answers, and those can be: I like it that way, I expect it to be that way, I'm neutral, I can live with it that way, and I dislike it that way. Please note that you can select to use different answers than those just provided. But whichever you choose, just make sure to stay consistent throughout the entire survey. After you collect the answers from the surveyed customers, you can determine the category of each requirement by reading it from the Kano analysis questions grid. The grid looks like this. In the top row are the values of the possible answers for the negative questions, and in the left column you put the possible values for the possible questions' answers. So, what are the meanings of the values from the cells? E stands for excitement, P is performance, T threshold, while I represents indifferent. That is, it means it does not fit into one of the three categories. You'll notice that there are also Q and R cells. These are notions for questionable or reversed. The answer doesn't make sense. If we go back to our game, we might ask the potential players a positive question. How would you feel if all 15 padlocks are locked when you enter the game? Where the answer would most certainly be, I expect it to be that way. And then we ask them a negative question like, how would you feel if one of the 15 padlocks is by accident left unlocked when you enter the game? Where you'll probably get the answer, I dislike it that way. This requirement will fall into the threshold requirement, meaning you should make an extra effort and carefully reset the puzzles in the room before each play. As you can see, Kano analysis can help you determine priorities of features based on their desired position in the marketplace. But what you must be aware of is that the categorization of a particular characteristic tends to shift over time. So after you break a couple of escape rooms with your friends, you'll start to expect to have hidden doors and rooms during the game. So once an excitement characteristic becomes a performance characteristic. In the next module, we are going to take a look at Agile techniques in the context of requirements management. How the right choice of techniques will help in facilitating and improving the requirements lifecycle.